Welcome to an early program today. We appreciate you all being here. I will be watching, of course, the Rumble rants, and I'm seeing you all lined up already over at the Twitter Spaces. At the Restream. We appreciate you being there on your various platforms. And we're having trouble with the Twitter Spaces. Speaking of Twitter Spaces, where it just doesn't seem to want to work today, so we may not have Twitter Spaces up and going. But do check if you have anybody that's interested in hearing the program. Of course, we are streaming on the usual sites. Today's guest is Dr. Thomas Binder. He is a cardiologist, and he spoke out about some of the less than wise decisions in the early days of the COVID pandemic. And for having done so, he was declared incompetent and forced, it seems like, by government entities to either go to a psychiatric hospital or take certain psychiatric medications or both. So we will explore what happened to Dr. Binder, and this may be one of the extraordinary stories of this extraordinary experience after this.
Our laws, as it pertains to substances, are draconian and bizarre. The psychopaths start this way. He was an alcoholic because of social media and pornography, PTSD, love addiction, fentanyl and heroin. Ridiculous. I'm a doctor, for Christ's sake. Where the hell do you think I learned that? I'm just saying, you go to treatment before you kill people. I am a clinician. I observe things about these chemicals. Let's just deal with what's real. We used to get these calls on Loveline all the time. Educate adolescents and to prevent and to treat. If you have trouble you can't stop and you want to help stop it, I can help. I got a lot to say. I got a lot more to say.
However, today it appears I will not be saying it on Twitter Spaces. That just will not cooperate with us today, but we will be streaming out on all the usual platforms. And as I was telling you, Dr. Thomas Binder is here with us, forced into a psychiatric setting for allegedly possible diagnosis of mania hypomania. Reminder, we have Naomi Wolf coming up on April 18th, Tuesday, also Tuesday 25th, Dr. Asim Malhotra, those are both at 3 o'clock. And Wednesday, April 26th, Dr. Robert Malone comes back to give us an update on some of his thoughts. And I'm seeing some rather interesting things going on in his world. And I'm also over there on the Rumble Rant. I see you guys now. Thank you for stopping by. Let me tell you a little more about my guest today. He is a cardiologist. Before, however, he was given a doctorate in immunology and virology. So he comes from honest training in the field that was in question. Became an internist like myself and then a fellowship in cardiology. 24 years as a practicing physician in Switzerland. And I always thought Switzerland was sort of a level-headed a place I might escape to one day if this country goes a little too crazy. You can follow Dr. Binder at Twitter, Thomas_Binder, B-I-N-D-E-R. And he has thomasbinder.ch. Caleb, is that correct? Is that what I'm saying there?
Yes, that's correct.
I'm not used to that CH. Please welcome Dr. Thomas Binder.
Thank you for having invited me, Dr. G.
It is a fascinating story. I hope you will allow me to sort of put you on the put the heat on you a little bit to sort of challenge some of the things that happened to you. So sort of, two peers talking about something that happened is going to be different than when you have a journalist interviewing you or something. And my hope is it will help refine your story. So why don't you first tell people who you are and what happened, what you were saying and what happened?
Well, I studied medicine in Zurich, Switzerland. Then, as you mentioned, I wanted to find out whether I should go into research or into clinics. So I spent more than a year in the Institute of Immunology and Virology, wrote my thesis there. I decided to go into clinics. So I specialized in internal medicine and then in cardiology, and had 35 years of experience, first 10 years in the hospital and 25 years now in my private practice as a cardiologist, and internist also a little bit for my cardiology patients. Yeah, well, in February 2020, I immediately realized, maybe because I have this combined scientific and clinical background, I immediately realized that this whole prevailing corona narrative is utter unscientific nonsense, from highly likely, no epidemiologically relevant asymptomatic transmission to said like zero COVID is an intellectual absurdity. And as it is my duty as a doctor to explain to my patients their medical condition in a way that they, as lay people, can understand and then decide how to proceed, I immediately felt it is my duty as a doctor to inform the populace about this medical condition of the whole society so that they can decide how to handle it. And so I started to write emails to fellow doctors, friends, journalists I knew, politicians I knew, explained them that indication to test is wrong, the test is wrong, highly likely no epidemiologically asymptomatic transmission, that even Anthony Fauci himself wrote in an editorial in the New England Journal of Medicine on February 28, 2020, that highly likely the virus is not more dangerous than influenza and all that. And I didn't get any response. This was interesting. Not even a response like, Thomas, you're crazy or so, just no response. So as I couldn't reach the public via journalists, I wrote blogs. I intensified my activity in the social media. And one blog I wrote on Thursday before Easter 2020, where I explained the whole thing. And that was clicked about 20,000 times within 24 hours. So for Switzerland, that was not bad. I thought, wow, I didn't understand why me, an ordinary doctor, should inform Switzerland and maybe the whole world. But well, I did it. And I thought, well, other fellow doctors will do the same. And in a week or so, this narrative will have collapsed. But well, something else happened. On Sunday, on Easter Sunday, I wanted to go on holiday with my wife for a week. So on Saturday in the evening, I did some final work in my practice. And then I was brutally arrested by an anti-terrorist unit. 20 police officers brutally arrested me in my practice. And in this whole action, 60 policemen were involved. At the same time, they protected all the ministers of my province in Switzerland. And the reason, I must stress that it was not directly the government that came after me, but a good acquaintance of mine read also the emails I wrote to him as well, blogs, my tweets and all that stuff. And in this, he saw threats, mainly threats of the government, but threats of the populace. I say this is not the killer virus. And he called another good acquaintance of mine, the prime minister of the province where I live in Switzerland, and he told him I would threaten the government, the society. I was armed and I had a psychiatric history. And both have my handy numbers stored on their handy. They didn't decide to call me, Thomas, we don't understand what you try to explain us. Maybe we can meet for a corona and you can explain us again. No, they decided to inform the chief of the state police. And so this action started. And after an hour, they realized there was no threat. I was not armed and I had no psychiatric history. They could not put me in jail. So from whatever reason, they sent an emergency doctor to me, an internist. And you must imagine at that time, she already wore a hardcore FFP2 mask and shouted out, put on the mask, the virus. So this colleague had to check my mental status. And it started somewhat like this. What is the date? I answered April 11th, 2020. Maybe the third question was, what is the current year? And well, this was not really intelligent, of course, but it was a kind of silent protest. I answered 1984. And I explained her the whole narrative, the editorial by Anthony Fauci in the New England Journal of Medicine, so on and so forth. And then she decided I would suffer from corona insanity. So she invented a new diagnosis. I never heard of an ICD code for this. And she decided, as I was not endangering others, I was self-endangering, although in in tweets. I posted some days before something like, I'm 58 years old, sporty and no medication, and will never ever commit suicide, because I knew, well, there might be some risk when I go public.
Might be risk of what?
Yeah.
I didn't hear the last part.
Somebody taking his life.
Yeah, well,
Oh, I see.
well,
Jeez, what a story.
That's a good
realize
idea,
something
though.
strange
Say, I have no.
might be attacked.
Yeah. All right. Let me back up a little bit. I have just some odds and ends I want to kind of clear up. Have you tried to sue that physician who was so inappropriate and so off base in terms of her evaluation? And so, by the way, dishonest in terms of the documentation?
Well, I mean, we launched many lawsuits in Switzerland. For example, a big lawsuit against the Swiss regulator, Swissmedic, in last July, hundreds of pages with hundreds of pages of scientific evidence, where we helped these lawyers, other scientists, and me. And this is not dealt with. I mean, it's the same everywhere. All institutions totally fail. Also, the judicial part. My weapon, for example, was the gun I got in 1980 when I entered Swiss military service. And when I left military service as a prime lieutenant about 20 years ago, I kept this at home. This is usual in Switzerland. This is legal. They found it where I had stored it at home without ammunition. So only to get back this weapon, just to be reinstated, just to be vindicated, I tried to get back this weapon. I spent already 15,000 Swiss francs for this, and without success. So it's a loss of time, energy, and money. So it's the populace. I mean, it's the populace who realizes we were on the right side of history, and I think this is the way we must inform the populace, and they thank us for standing up against this insanity. And then, well, I must say, so the psychiatrist diagnosed mania, as you mentioned. The psychiatrist then diagnosed mania. The first 36 hours I spent in a padded cell in isolation. And then the psychiatrist diagnosed mania. Of course, the psychiatrist lived also in this context of delusion. He thought I am insane. And of course, I appealed. And the court decided, yes, they must release me. But they gave me two options. They said, well, you want to continue to work. So we give you two options. Either you stay in the psychiatric hospital for 6 weeks to have treated this mania, or you can leave and continue to work, but then you have to take a neuroleptic Abilify. And whether I took it or not was weakly controlled by a blood level exam. So these were really Soviet-style psychiatric methods. Of course, yeah. And then, of course, I decided to do the latter. After some weeks, my liver enzymes were so, I was happy that my liver didn't like Abilify. The liver enzymes were elevated 3-4 times, so I could stop it, and I could free myself from this governmental psychiatry and go to a private psychiatrist whom I had to visit about every 6 weeks, because the medical authorities demanded, of course, that the psychiatrist checks whether I'm mentally stable and allowed to treat patients.
What do you imagine happened to your government? They've always seemed very rational, even. Did all those years of being buttoned up finally just blow apart in a mass sort of formation psychosis? What do you imagine happened? Or was it just a few people that had that delusion, the preoccupation, the viral panic that sort of held sway over others?
I mean, I think my case shows nicely what's happening. Obviously, the society is divided in a way that we never experienced before. And this doesn't happen naturally. This, of course, means that a huge part of the humanity is caught in the context of delusion, is living in a sect or a cult. And of course, everybody says, "Oh, I'm the realist. You are living in a cult." Huh? And
Right.
in this situation, we have always to question ourselves 100 times: Am I absolutely sure that I'm the realist and that I'm not the deluded?
Right.
And this
Yes.
question we
Yes.
can only answer if we look at the reality as soberly as possible. So I always try to present to the public, look, this is the reality. This is scientifically evidence-based. Now compare this to what is told to you by the government, by the authorities. But your question, I think, this strength of this power of delusion is extremely powerful. It's amazing. I mean, for the first moment, you think, oh well, they are all evil. But I'm quite sure, but most of them are not evil. They are just totally deluded, as most people were. And of course, I think in key positions, I mean, we must realize that this was planned over decades. And I guess in key positions, they installed some people who are really evil. But I think probably most people, even in higher ranks of the politics and the health authorities, etc., are just totally deluded, totally brainwashed.
Yeah, there was this industry of pandemic policy and pandemic readiness, sort of pandemic ink, so to speak. And they were in their bubble, and many of them had never practiced medicine. Many of them were pediatricians because that's where all the vaccines were administered, and many of them weren't even physicians. And so, how could we expect that they would have the nuanced risk-reward kind of instinct that we have naturally? You know, we looked at what was happening and went, wait a minute, the panic, the consequence, the mental health consequence, the lack of sunshine and exercise, all this is going to have a net bad effect. Yes, this is a terrible virus. Yes, this is a bad thing. There are other ways to approach this. But just saying those words at that time were anathema. They were met with aggression. And again, I'm wondering what we need to do because there's still people that believe everything they did was the right thing and are continuing to do stuff that really makes no sense. Children masked. I see people with masks outdoors. I see people masking at all, frankly. We were very clear that the paper mask, the cloth mask just don't work. I mean, the evidence is so clear. People want to wear an N95. Okay, fine. But that we are doing these things to this day, does some more sort of significant action to help raise awareness or to point out the objective failures so they don't happen again?
Yes, I think that it is rather difficult. The longer this goes on, the more difficult it becomes to educate the populace, because nobody wants to admit that he was fooled, and that he was fooled for 3 years, and especially because the solution is that simple. I mean, we were always told the world is incredibly complicated. We have to trust the experts. We cannot understand anything. But in fact, it is incredibly simple. It's a bunch of multi-billionaire psychopaths who create all our problems, and we must just kick them into nowhere land, and then our problems are solved.
Well, I hope you have your tongue embedded in your cheek, much like you did when you said 1984, when you say things like that with such certainty, because that does sound a little bit excessive. I want us to find a middle zone, and it may or may not be true that they are sort of involved with this, but there were certainly many, many, many more players than just those guys.
Yes, sure. I mean, the people sometimes think in such a conspiracy, each and every doctor and journalist must be involved. No, this is not true. Most people collude unknowingly. I mean, such a conspiracy started by a bunch of psychopaths, and then many people jump on the bandwagon because of for personal gain, maybe for money, to gain, for career reasons, for appreciation, or for whatever. And it was always like this. Every banality of evil. The problem in such a banality of evil is not the the bunch of psychopaths, even not the many narcissistic black guys who jump on the bandwagon, but the silent majority. This is the main problem, the silent majority, and we have to wake up the silent majority. But this is rather difficult, and now we have these problem with the injections. So of course nobody wants to see this incredible damage. I mean, if you ask me,
let me interrupt on that, if you don't mind. Is it not the case that Switzerland just today suspended all vaccine therapy? At least any mandate or any recommendation? It's now up to individual physicians exclusively.
It's not everything that is reported is true. I mean, I often read that they stopped the vaccinations. This is not true. For the moment, in spring, summer, they gave no recommendation. So for the moment, there is no recommendation to get another shot. But this does not mean that we stopped everything. To the contrary, Swissmedic, the Swiss regulator for drugs and vaccines, some weeks ago prolonged the temporary authorization. In Switzerland, it's not called emergency use authorization, it's called a temporary authorization. These injectables were authorized for 2 years, and they prolonged it now for another 5 years from 5-year-olds up. So it's not. It's not.
So I want to make sure I'm hearing you. So it remains a. So in this country, we recommended first. It's being strongly recommended for 6 months and above. You're saying recommendations have ceased, but the approvals continue for most ages. Correct?
Exactly. It's possible that in autumn they will recommend it again. This we don't know yet. So it's not like it portrays by some people that the authorization was halted. It's just a recommendation. And for the moment in Switzerland, almost nobody got the vaccine. And there is some pressure on the government as well. Maybe you know, we had 2 referendums against the COVID law. The COVID law gave the authorities these authoritarian measures. And now currently there is the third referendum against the COVID law in July. So this puts pressure on the government as well. And of course they want to calm down the people a little bit. Yes, we are not. We are sane. We are reasonable, but we do not know what will happen if this is not. If the COVID law will be accepted again. This might also be some tactics of the government.
So let me. I'm gonna just push back on you personally a little bit, if you don't mind. Just again, refine your story as best we possibly can. You seem like a very even, rational, caring, careful, reasoned person. But sometimes you say some things that are pretty extreme, and you say them on Twitter, and you say them a lot. I tried to get through March, and I couldn't even scroll through March of 2023. And I thought, what is that? I could see why somebody might call that hypomania or something. What are you doing?
Well, no, I mean, as I said, in February 2020, I realized all this is nonsense. And I mean, it's about life and death. I mean, it's my duty as a doctor to inform the populace. I saw this whole insanity. I saw that this is threatening the livelihoods and even the lives of many people. So it was my duty as a doctor to inform the populace.
No, maybe I get you. I hear you.
Somewhat hyperactive, but I thought, well, this information must go out. This must spread. This must become viral, and in a week or so, this will the corona narrative will have collapsed. So I was maybe a little bit hyperactive, but I think the people can understand. Can understand a little bit.
No, you were. Listen, I remember that. I remember what that all felt like. I see why people would get very upset and active and mobilized, and I was feeling some of the same stuff at the time. We sort of gave up here because it was just, it was a tidal wave, and that's the way it was going to be, and that's that. But I did spend a lot of time myself trying to help people understand what was going on and to calm everybody down, because the panic was the really big problem. The panic was only going to make things worse and only harm people. And, when I think back, I kept telling our own mayor here in Los Angeles to shut up, stop saying shelter in place. That is reserved for a nuclear holocaust. That is when something horrible is about to happen. There's no word. You can't say anything more alarming than shelter in place. Tell people, don't congregate, isolate protect whatever you got to say, but shelter in place. They insisted on using language that was the most disturbing possible. And so I understand why you would get excited. I just want to examine as objectively as possible, though, why people would put you in the hospital and make sure we're not missing something. Because as you know, when people get manic and hypomanic, they often have no perception of how they are objectively, and then they don't remember it when it's all over. So the only residual for you would be Twitter. So do you look back on your Twitter and think, oh, maybe that was a bit too much? I can see where they got a little bit alarmed.
Well, I started to whisper a little bit, and then I was talking a little bit louder, and always a little bit louder, because nobody wanted to hear me. And in the end, maybe I cried a little bit too loud. But this is possible. For some people, it might have been a little bit too loud, but it was really a development. And of course, I always advocated for peaceful resistance. And as you said, it is the duty of our doctors to calm down the populace, not to frighten the populace. I mean, if I have a patient with a serious disease, for example, cancer, I would never ever tell him, oh my God, you have cancer, I cannot help you, go home, you will die.
You're going to die. Oh my God, run away. it's so insane. Yeah, it's so crazy.
I will try to calm him. I will say, yes, of course, there is a serious condition, but there are some solutions. We can find a good way if we can fight this together, and we have a good chance to win. So we have to calm the populace.
And the reason you do that, the reason you do that is that fear harms, panic harms both mental health and all outcomes. We know that. And so for them to be using fear, frankly, is sort of I don't want to get caught up in too strong a language, but I have strong words to say about what I think about people using fear on the general population, unless there is an asteroid coming, or unless there is a nuclear holocaust on the way. Then maybe a little bit of fear is warranted. It's still not going to help, really, but but that's neither here nor there. So there's a lot more to talk about. It's interesting. I want to hear a little more, because we are sort of on the other side of things now. Things are a bit different now, and I'm sort of trying to formulate my own opinions about vaccine therapy and whatnot. Let's do this. Let's take a little break, and then we'll keep going with Dr. Thomas Binder. Binder, is it Binder or Binder?
It's actually Binder, but I'm used that English-speaking people usually call me Binder.
Okay, fair enough. And it's Thomas underscore I'm going to be a little bit respectful of the language, underscore Binder, Binder, and check him out there. And I want you to think during the break about the question I asked you a few minutes ago, because this is almost the most confused. I get very confused about many of these things that have happened. But back to the Swiss government, it seems so out of character for the functioning of the government of Switzerland, or am I misjudging or misunderstanding what it's like to live under that government? It seems to me, as an outsider, extremely out of character for them to have behaved like this. So when we get back, I want you to tell me, is that true? And if so, what do you think happened? Or am I just flat out wrong? It's just in keeping with their behavior generally. We'll be right back with Dr. Thomas Binder. Springtime is here, and personally, I can get red and irritated skin during these months, especially when I travel. But now I have an extra layer of protection thanks to Genucel Skincare. Genucel's Ultra Retinol, formulated with the most powerful retinol alternative, bakuchiol, and proprietary MDL technology soothes irritation and visibly targets red, blotchy skin. And the under eye cream, of course, helps hide the bags and puffiness that you can get from travel and just lack of sleep generally. In fact, you might have witnessed the astonishing effects of Genucel Redness Repair Intensive during a recent unplanned moment of our show, repairing my skin within minutes right before your eyes. That is how fast these products work.
I know I'm a snob about the products I use on my face. Everybody knows it. Every time I go to the dermatologist's office, they're just rows and rows of different creams. Retinols, vitamin C cream, under eye cream, night creams.
Scrubs.
And then when I get to the counter, they're overpriced. All kinds of products that you can all find at Genucel.com. I've fallen in love with this product at a fraction of the price.
Visit Genucel.com/Drew today and check out the personalized packages from Susan and myself, bundled with our favorite Genucel serums. And remember to use the promo code DREW for an extra 10% off. All orders are upgraded to free shipping. Plus, if you order now, every subscribe and save package gets a free spring spa package with 3 of Genucel's best-selling spa products ready to try in the comfort of your own home. One more time, that is Genucel.com/Drew, Genucel.com/Drew. Over the last few months, no doubt you've heard a lot about spike protein, certainly on this program. The reality is, once lockdowns are well behind us, we will likely still be dealing with the effects of COVID and potentially the COVID-19 vaccines. Therefore, the spike protein may prove to be an important part of our story. With that in mind, I want to introduce you to the Wellness Company's Spike Support Formula. Whether you've been vaccinated or not, spike protein may be something you have become concerned about. Good news is that there's some interesting research on how to potentially deal with it. Studies have suggested that nattokinase and dandelion root are showing some potential in protecting you and your family. Our friend Dr. Peter McCullough and the team at the Wellness Company have the only product on the market that contains both nattokinase and dandelion root. In addition to the nattokinase and the dandelion root, the Wellness Company's Spike Support Formula also includes natural antioxidant ingredients such as black sativa extract, green tea, and iris sea moss, all thought to help boost immune health. Go to twc.health/Drew to order today. Use code DREW at checkout for 10% off today. Buy gold and get a free safe to store it in. You heard right. On qualifying purchases from Birch Gold Group now through March 31st, they will ship you a free safe directly to your door. Here's the deal. Fed keeps raising rates because it is the only tool they have to keep inflation under control. But it isn't working. You can't spend your way out of inflation. You've seen the impact on the stock market. You've seen the impact on your savings. Hedge inflation by owning gold, whether physical gold and silver in your safe or through an IRA in precious metals where you can hold real gold and silver in tax-sheltered retirement accounts. Birch Gold has an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau and thousands of satisfied customers. Visit birchgold.com/Drew for your free info kit on gold and to claim eligibility for your free home safe by March 31st on qualifying purchases. Again, visit BIRCH Gold, birchgold.com/DREW. And we are back with Dr. Thomas Binder. He's a cardiologist, also virologist, immunologist. And Dr. Binder, before I have you answer my question about the Swiss government, I just want to say thank you for selecting Corona beer as something we should do to discuss the Corona pandemic insanity. I thought that was funny. So thank you for sliding that in there. But as far as it pertains to the Swiss government, what am I getting right or wrong there?
Well, I think everybody around the globe has the same problem. We have to realize that obviously our governments that we trusted mostly before does not always work in the interest of the populace, but in others' interest. This is hard. This is hard to believe. This is hard to swallow. But I mean, this is fact. I mean, I guess the quality of the politicians, but maybe we have to discuss a little bit about the current power structure. I guess the quality of politicians, but also of other people in powerful positions is not the same as it was 30, 40 years ago. I tweeted once, arrogance, ignorance, and power are a combustible mixture that someday had to blow up in our faces. And I think we see this.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, look at the quality
Mm.
of most politicians. Honestly, I mean, I sometimes call them narcissistic village idiots. But nowadays, I prefer to call them urban idiots because it is the rooted people on the countryside that are much more reasonable. The most easily to be deluded are obviously the narcissistic academicians who cannot even have the idea to be wrong. And not only to be wrong, but to be completely wrong. This was also interesting to realize. Obviously, us doctors and other academicians are much easier to be deluded as so-called common, ordinary people rooted in the reality. I have the highest respect for these so-called common people. It's the problem is the academicians, and probably in these positions of power there is a lot of incompetence, and of course these people at the same time they have no idea what they are talking about. I mean, for example, in Switzerland or in every country, the politicians debated whether these vaccines should become mandatory. I mean, they have no idea what they are talking about, and they make such decisions about life and death. This is absolutely incredible and insane, and this is the problem.
Yeah.
And of course, these are the puppeteers of them are psychopaths. They can be easily deluded. They have no idea, so they are presented experts, and these experts tell them what to do. They trust these experts because they have no idea. I think this is a main problem. So we have in the higher power echelons, we have these narcissists, and above them we have the psychopaths. Yeah. I think
wonderful combination, by the way.
This quite a lot. And the psychopaths manage to impose their psychopathy on the whole society. And the psychopaths work incredibly simply. They just put everything upside down. And this explains nicely the total insanity we see globally nowadays. We live in a psychopathic anti-universe. Everything is turned upside down. Good is bad, war is peace, and etc., etc. Orwell and Huxley combined.
Is it? I totally agree with the upside down thing. I've been saying that for a couple of years that I live in the upside down, and I worry that it's just that I come from another generation, and so I'm not seeing something enlightened. But it feels like the upside down. Certainly, isn't it also possible to sort of pull upon theorists like the guys that wrote The Fourth Turning, that a certain kind of personality style takes over the populace at large as a sort of general quality of traits? Not that there's actual individuals necessarily raining down upon, but more that we all acquired through various changes in our family systems, environment, God knows what environmental influences. We develop these certain traits. I sort of hearken to Christopher Lasch and the culture of narcissism, that we've clearly gone through this big narcissistic turn. I wonder if we've gone, and you keep using the word psychopath, because that, to me, that's a real specific thing, but I wonder if we've gone to more of sociopathic sort of turn, where we're all sort of getting some of those features such that the public mind, as a global, entity, now that we're all connected especially, is developing these traits. Do you think there's something to that theory?
I fully agree with you. I guess in the late 1970s, the age of narcissism started. I mean, everybody's running around with the handy shooting selfies. I mean, I for example, you certainly know the Matterhorn, the Mont Serrat in Switzerland, the famous mountain near Zermatt. I photographed this 100 times or so, but I could never ever have the idea to put my face in front of this nice mountain. But nowadays, you only see such pictures. So we are currently at the height of this age of narcissism. And of course, nowadays, you must not be good, you must be a good actor. So then you go up in the power, in the hierarchy. And of course, at the top of this pyramid, we have the narcissists, and also maybe that we do not have to debate whether there are psychopaths or sociopaths. Maybe we could just call them severe malignant narcissists.
Yeah,
so of course,
I like that. I like that.
They are there as well. And of course, the problem is, if you are a good narcissist, you may become embarrassing if the dosage is too high. The problem is the malicious
Yeah.
narcissist who devaluates other people, who has no empathy, no
Yeah.
remorse, and this
Right.
is the problem. Yeah. But I fully
That is
agree.
the
I
problem.
think we are at the height
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
narcissism.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's right. And I think I wrote a book about narcissism about 15 years ago, and I wanted to put in a chapter about other periods of history where severe narcissism has taken hold. And I could find, the closest thing in our own time that I could find was pre-revolutionary France. I don't know if you have any opinion about that, but the destruction of the families, the fact that children were left routinely on the steps of orphanages, only 1 out of 5 survived, and then the abuse of children and the sexualization of children by the time they were teenagers, and then the guillotines. And then here it comes. That was to me the closest era to our own. Do you agree with that, or do you have your own theory?
Yeah, well, what we see, I mean, we can also call it the neoliberal revolution. In 1947, in Switzerland, the Mont Pelerin Society was founded. I don't know whether you know about this, at the Lac of Geneva.
Mm-mm.
And this was hijacked by powerful multi-billionaires. And then thousands of NGOs were created. And this was planned over decades. And they first invaded the universities. They took over the universities. I mean, look at the most famous universities. Currently, you learn that CO2, the elixir of life, is a poison. That sun, clouds, cosmic rays, oceans do not exist, but CO2, and not only CO2, the 4% anthropogenic anthropogenic CO2 are the climate's control knob. Honestly, this is totally insane as well. But this is the current ideology in our most famous universities. I mean, it's insane. If I'm happy that I'm now not 20. I mean, if I was 20, where should I go to study? I mean, you have to write this nonsense in the exams, or you don't pass. It's really it's incredible, and they try to destroy the family. They try to atomize the individuals. In the end, we should lose every self-confidence. In the end, they want us that we do not even know whether we are male or female. This is the agenda. That the people, or for example, this is Hannah Arendt. Hannah Arendt wrote in Origins of Totalitarianism in 1951. I freely citated, the ideal subject of any authoritarian rule is not the convinced communist or the convinced Nazi, but people who can no longer distinguish fact from fiction and truth from false. And I think this is what's happening. We are bombarded with information bits, fragmented, decontextualized information, and the people do no longer know what is true and what is false. And in the end, they do no longer know whether they are male or female.
You mentioned, I forget, I didn't, it was a term I'd heard following World War II, banal, what was it? Banal?
Banality of evil, banality of evil.
Banality of evil, banality of evil, which is sort of the go ahead.
Yeah, this was Hannah Arendt. I think she created this or reanimated this. I don't know, but it describes that there is a small conspiracy of evil people, and then their lackeys, their narcissistic lackeys, jump on the bandwagon and make this possible, another penalty of evil possible. Only a few psychopaths had no chance. It is the many narcissistic lackeys who jump on the bandwagon, and then of course the silent majority that allows this to happen. Yeah, so we should forget
the
our
banality.
own
Yeah. I mean, Hannah Arendt was a very well-known philosopher, and that's the point, which is that people go, how could the average German have done what they did? Well, that's the banality of evil, that people go along with stuff that they should be standing up to. But even if you did become aggressive or excessive, you still, by being honest and being motivated out of concern for the well-being of the populace, had to pay a huge price. Are you able to practice now? Do you have to still take medication? What's your current status?
I never was aggressive. I mean, I just wrote plain English. I mean, well, and just in the end, I mean, I started
but Thomas, Dr. Bender, with full respect, I've read some. With full respect, I've read some of your tweets. They're aggressive.
But he seems fine.
No,
like
of course
he's
he
super
seems
smart.
fine. That's what I'm saying.
It's almost like he has too much intelligence, he's being obvious. And the rational revolution was.
I like him for the rational revolution.
Yeah,
it's a good idea.
It was shut down.
But again, I'm just asking the questions.
If you look what happens by now, if you look what happens by now, honestly, we see a genocide. I mean, different methods. Whether we take the number of reported deaths from the injections and multiply them by the underreporting factor of 41 that was once calculated by the CDC, or Denis Rancourt, I don't know whether you know him, a Canadian physician who really did interdisciplinary research. He's now a professor emeritus. He calculated 13 million deaths from the excess mortality. And then there is Mark Skidmore, an American economist, who did another method, a kind of survey, and he got 330,000 deaths in the US. So 3 different methods result in the same amount of more than 10 million injection deaths. I mean, this is a genocide. I mean, honestly, I mean, I always was peaceful and calm, but we have to speak loud, and we have to speak ever more loudly until this is finished.
Let me go.
I agree.
Let me go.
I don't want to get you in trouble, but
she came running in here to get in with you.
No, I'm
Susan,
Tacky. I was listening.
Again, my job is to sort of.
No, I know, Drew, what your job is, but I'm not a medical professional, but I'm also a rational human being.
No, I understand, but Dr. Bender's been attacked from all sides, and if somebody doesn't ask tough questions, he's just going to continue to get attacked.
I was thinking the same thing, but you and I know you always do that. That's the important thing. We want to make sure that everybody understands, the psychology, but everything he said is exactly what Kelly talks about.
We have heard. We have been, so Dr. Bender, we've been interviewing a lot of the names you've heard and you've spoken of that. Then we've heard these things, repeatedly and are very concerned about it.
He just did the whole thing in one synopsis.
The problem I'm having. Go ahead.
The question
Sorry.
was whether I never did something wrong. So the criminal investigation against me that could have been suspended after 1 hour, it was suspended after 15 months. So of course that the journalist would always write, this Dr. Binder, blathering corona nonsense, he's an insane criminal. And I never told something wrong. Everything I told was scientifically evidence-based. So they could not really harm me. After I was released, of course, I continued to work in my practice. And we are flooded with patients, of course, now that have lost their trust in the existing healthcare system, in their GPs, and we are flooded with patients. It is extreme. I lost some elderly patients who could not believe that the Swiss public broadcaster, whom we are obliged to pay 1 Swiss franc per day so that we informed objectively, that they are lied by the public broadcaster and that Dr. Binder tells the truth. But these are maybe 1 or 2 dozen elderly patients, and currently we are flooded with patients, especially also with injection injured patients.
We've certainly seen our share of
that.
that.
Your business probably is booming since the vaccine.
So let me just back up a little bit. I'm going to jump into your bandwagon for a second and just talk about the diagnosis.
This, of course, was not true. I never had a psychiatric history.
Hold on. So hold on. Right. So I'm going to back you up on this. I want people to understand that bipolar 1 is something that comes on in late adolescence, early adulthood. It doesn't come in a middle age or. How old are you, Dr. Binder? If you don't mind me asking.
I'm 61. I will be 62 in September.
Okay. All right. Okay, so there's only I worked in a psychiatric hospital for 30 years, and there was bipolar disorder does not begin in the 60s. It can features of it can emerge from drug use, head injury, and stroke. I'm guessing none of those apply to you, correct?
No, no.
Right,
No.
right. And so the fact that they gave you a diagnosis with no family history, no antecedent history is unthinkable. It's disgusting. And that, again, that speaks of incompetence as well as delusion. So, I got your back on this. I understand that the
Maybe I may add,
outrageousness from my standpoint.
thank you very
Go
much.
ahead.
It's very kind. And I can add, I mean, I worked until the day of my arrest, and I worked from day one after when I was released. If I had mania, I would not be capable to work as a
No,
doctor.
of course,
This
of course.
alone
Of course. Now,
tells that this diagnosis is wrong.
I'm going to be generous to the people that were evaluating you and say, okay, maybe he had cyclothymia and got excited and got overly, I'll use the word aggressive in some of the things he was saying. That is not illegal, and that's not a psychiatric problem, not one requiring medication or hospitalization. That's for sure. And I'm saying that just to be generous to those guys.
Did they take you off of Twitter?
That.
Did you lose Twitter, or did you stay on Twitter?
Yeah, sure. Well, after this, of course, maybe I was also part of these 22 life scientists who did this external peer review of the Corman-Drosten protocol in November 2020. That had 10 based this recipe for the RT-PCR test had 10 major flaws. There were conflicts of interest. The peer review lasted less than 24 hours. This also was a joke. Then I became a member of Doctors for COVID Ethics. We wrote our first open letter to the EMA, the European Medical Agency, the drug regulator of the EU, in March 2021. And there we predicted, first of all, Professor Emeritus Sucharit Bhakti, the German microbiologist you certainly know, we predicted almost everything that would happen with these injections, and we demanded that the approval would be immediately withdrawn. And I posted this on March 30, 2021, and I was banned from Twitter without any warning until Elon Musk reinstated me this January.
Okay, so Susan, as you expected, that did happen.
Shocking.
Shocking.
It's
shocking.
shocking.
Yeah, it's all shocking. It's awful. It makes me sick in my stomach. I'm just trying to understand it with great clarity because it is such. We got to examine all these things that happened during this insanity, and we have to be really clear on what happened, what it was, and I'm really looking now to start. I'm starting to think that if we don't have people that apologize or who do take more aggressive action against those people who were so at ease in harming other people, I don't know. I just think we have to that's why I asked you early on about lawsuits and things. I've always had this feeling that the courts may be the place this all gets sorted out. Is that kind of thing still going on with you?
Well, for the moment, I'm not doing anything. I think in the end, it's the populace who must end this on the streets. It's civil disobedience. I mean, we just must say no. If they come again with such a incredible vaccine, if they come back with the mask, we must just say them no. We do not comply. And we must gain, of course, the police as well. There are many great people in the police. Most are brave people, nice, kind, good people. We must educate them as well. And of course, if the government loses the support of the police and of the army, they will become a problem. Maybe one important thing I can add. It is important that the people realize that not only these jabs against SARS-CoV-2 are dangerous. It is the whole modified RNA platform that must be forbidden for humans and for animals. And the reason is simple. It can be explained so that every lay person can understand it. There are two basic flaws in this platform. The first flaw is that we inject the construction plan for a protein foreign to the body without having any control which cells produce it, in what amount, and for how long. So already the individual effective dose is unknown. I mean, this alone would be reason that they should never have been approved. I mean, Paracelsus said in the 16th century, it's the dose that makes the poison. And the other fundamental flaw is the autoimmune attack against the foreign protein expressing and then presenting cells. Our fundamental principle of our immune system is to recognize foreign. If it recognizes foreign, it does not negotiate. Do you come in peace or are you evil? It just shoots and thinks then. So these cells are destroyed. If these are muscle cells, this will not be a problem. The problem, they can regenerate. But if these are heart muscle cells or brain cells, they cannot regenerate. They are damaged. And this autoimmune-like attack against the foreign protein producing, expressing, and presenting cells is very similar to transplant rejection. It is important that we must forbid the whole modified RNA vaccine platform.
That is an interesting construct of thinking it as really would be sort of transplant versus host disease. That's very interesting. This
is the basic mechanism. That's the main problem.
Well, and to be. And I got to tell you, some of the stuff I've seen from vaccine injury kind of feels like that. So it's kind of, it rings sort of true to me. I'm going to do some more thinking on that. My great fear is
it is proven by the dermatologist.
And my great fear
is very similar to transplant rejection.
Yeah,
sorry.
I hear you. Well, you're talking about so you're saying it's actually the transplant tissue being rejected. I'm saying there's a thing called transplant versus host disease. I don't know if you've ever seen that, where having the transplant in causes an autoimmune attack on the body. This has that kind of quality about it. But let me just say that
it is more host against graft. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I'm just thinking about the cases of vaccine injury I've seen. In fact, I'm going to bring some on for you guys that are listening, some vaccine injured people to talk about their experience, and you'll see what I'm talking about. And I want you guys on Restream and Rumble Rants. You're all over the place. I don't understand what you're angry or not angry about. We're trying to back up what Dr. Binder is saying here and clarify his story so people can't get at him in ways where there could be weaknesses if we were not really narrowing down exactly what happened to him. But my fear is that all of this is a warm-up for a CO2 shelter-in-place panic. And so, I'm fearful that they're going to use the same techniques again in some other crazy way.
I guess it's MRSA now.
Non-pandemic, or it's going to be Marburg, whatever, or CO2, or
not MRSA,
something. They're going to keep using this technique. And we have to really, as you were saying, not succumb to it. The unfortunate thing is, maybe there is a day when we need to collectively respond with fear. I don't know. I think the risk is far greater that they would be manipulating us than we would actually need to respond with fear. Dr. Binder, I have to wrap up, so I'll let you sort of have final word right here, and then we have to go.
Yeah, well, first, it is the duty of us doctors. I mean, if you did not stand against this until now, please, my fellow doctors, the longer you wait, the more guilty you will become. Please remember, first, do no harm, or the more modern version is the Geneva Declaration of the World Medical Association. I will not use my medical knowledge to violate civil liberties and human rights, even under threat. So I was under threat. I survived. Do not panic. They could not destroy me 3 years ago. They cannot destroy you. We are networked globally now. If they come after you, we are there. We help you. There will be a huge public outcry. Don't be afraid to go public. Help to stop this insanity now.
I think the word courage has come off my lips many times, and I never expected in my lifetime for the words freedom and courage to be so commonly at issue, but they are an issue of our time, and I agree with you. People do need to speak up. It is kind of an extraordinary time.
There is a pandemic of cowards. There is a pandemic of cowards. This is the main problem. Yeah.
And I am watching your comments on Restream. They want you back, so I hope I can prevail upon you to come back again sometime soon to kind of continue our conversation and update things and maybe get more into the weeds on some of the things as it pertains to vaccine, because you and I are going to differ a little bit on stuff, but that's what makes things interesting as far as I'm concerned. I always called, alternative, even way far outlying ideas, I always called those interesting, not misinformation. They were just interesting. And I am firmly of the opinion that exposing people to as much interesting information as possible, the less paranoid, the less siloed, the more open they are, the better thinking they'll be. The idea that you can't handle the truth is disgusting to me. You can handle the truth. You just got to listen, figure it out, take your time, be patient. And I hope this conversation today helped add to that. And Dr. Binder, I thank you, and hopefully we'll have you back sometime soon.
I thank you, Dr. Drew. Thank you very much.
Cheers, sir. We'll have that Corona sometime about the Corona. And so again, you guys know that I'm developing actively my vaccine concerns and considerations. I have ceased vaccinating my older patients, although they're all vaxxed and boosted and double boosted and bivalent boosted, and everybody's done just fine. And it's been to their advantage that in that group. What I've always been concerned about was in younger people, where I've seen a lot of vaccine injury, and I don't know what we were doing, what we were preventing. The Omicron is so mild in that age group, and can't we get to that? Don't we understand that now? Now, I'm not saying that in pregnant women and in babies there can't be bad situations, and in the immunosuppressed, of course. But generally for the average person to push vaccine hard, still hard for me to understand, especially when so many countries now are stopping the vaccine mandate, Switzerland being the latest. And although
He said it's probably not true. It's probably fake news.
No,
whatever.
He's concerned that they haven't rescinded the authorization. He wants the whole thing taken down. That's a different issue than just not recommending. I'm looking for people to leave it in the hands of the individual physicians and not push so hard.
Well, I love that you're his age and you guys have so much wealth of knowledge in medicine over the years and history. Yep. And also, we had parents that lived another generation ahead of us that would be, just freaked out by this whole thing too. So it's just nice to hear somebody be the voice of reason, but also from an intellectual side and a medical side. I mean, a cardiologist is a smart guy. You know what I mean?
Yes.
This is not somebody who gets in your heart.
No, that's
good at what they do.
That's exactly the point. This guy was vilified and crushed and imprisoned and called names and given diagnoses.
If you can't get him on anything else, throw him in the loony bin.
Even though he might have been kind of wild and aggressive online, there's no possibility. That's the point I was making, unless he'd had a stroke, drugs, or a head injury, which he had none of. So the possibility of bipolar 1 presenting at age 62 is just not just doesn't happen like that.
LSD.
So, yeah, that can do it, but it's but not. That's not his deal.
I'm assuming not.
So here's the deal. We're gone the rest of the week today, this week as of today, and we'll be back Monday. Susan, is that correct?
Yes.
Or are we going to do Tuesday? We're going to do Tuesday
no Monday, because remember Caleb's
guys.
at a wedding.
So April 18th, we'll be back with Naomi Wolf. Here we go. This is our ritual every show.
We're going to go now.
April 18th with Naomi Wolf. April 25th, Malhotra comes back. Robert Malone, 26th. And then, of course, that next Wednesday, the 19th, we have Kelly Victory back in.
We'll have some great things during the week of next week, too.
I do want to do a call show with her at some time, so that might be the one. So we'll see. All right, everybody, we have to catch a plane, so we appreciate you stopping by early. We'll see you on the next show, which is a week from today. Ask Dr. Drew is produced by Caleb Nation and Susan Pinsky. As a reminder, the discussions here are not a substitute for medical care, diagnosis, or treatment. This show is intended for educational and informational purposes only. I am a licensed physician, but I am not a replacement for your personal doctor, and I am not practicing medicine here. Always remember that our understanding of medicine and science is constantly evolving. Though my opinion is based on the information that is available to me today, some of the contents of this show could be outdated in the future. Be sure to check with trusted resources in case any of the information has been updated since this was published. If you or someone you know is in immediate danger, don't call me, call 911. If you're feeling hopeless or suicidal, call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 800-273-8255. You can find more of my recommended organizations and helpful resources at drdrew.com/help. I don't want to give her the idea that things were just glorious. These are stressful, difficult years.
Yes.
And you have to just get through that because you have a different priority, which is raising these damn kids and keeping the relationship alive and satisfied to the point that you're still connected. You know, you still, like Susan's telling you, but the time, as she said, is when you really have the time. So when you go on vacation, which you must do, you can boom, you can be
like
good.
An overnight somewhere, just a little.
So you can be fine.
Date night.
Because I remember when the kids were left for college, the kind of feeling I had was just like, oh my God, that's right. We really like each other.
Yeah.
We'd forgotten that because we were busy building a life and a family and this all together. But it's like, oh yeah, we also really like each other and enjoy
And
time
we could
together.
have sex anytime.
Yeah.